There are many boxers who have not yet suffered a loss, and it may seem like a lot of top boxers have undefeated records. However, it's not that difficult to remain undefeated, relatively speaking. One might assume that an undefeated record is a rarity, only achieved by the very best, but that's not necessarily the case. In this video, I will discuss the prevalence of undefeated records in boxing, the importance of context when evaluating such records, and how boxing promotions manufacture these records to promote their fighters. To illustrate just how common undefeated records are, I crunched some numbers. I examined the top 10 boxers in each of the 15 weight classes as ranked by ESPN. While it is possible to argue that ESPN's ranking may not be accurate, they provided the cleanest and easiest way to access the records of each fighter. The results were surprising even to me, and I had to double-check the statistics. Out of the 150 fighters surveyed, exactly 50, or 33%, were undefeated. It's worth noting that an undefeated record should be an impressive feat, something that only the top 5 or 10 boxers in the world could achieve. However, in this case, 1 in 3 boxers have an undefeated record. This statistic may seem high, but it demonstrates that being undefeated is not necessarily an indication of greatness. Understanding the context in which these records are achieved is crucial to evaluating a boxer's skill and potential. Additionally, it's important to recognize that boxing promotions may manufacture undefeated records to promote their fighters, and this must be taken into account when evaluating a boxer's record. To provide more context and comparison, I conducted a similar experiment with the top 10 fighters in each weight division of the UFC. The results showed that only 5 out of 80 fighters, 6.25%, were undefeated, which is significantly lower than the 33% in boxing. Upon further analysis, I discovered that many of the other boxers who were not undefeated only had 1 loss and were previously undefeated for a long time. In boxing, many fighters are built up to be undefeated until they face an opponent of equal caliber, resulting in one fighter losing their undefeated record. If we include boxers with only 1 loss, the percentage of the top 10 boxers within their division with 1 loss or less increases to 85, 56%. If we add boxers with 2 losses, the percentage increases to 119, 79%. And if we add boxers with 3 losses, the percentage goes up to 136, 90%. Surprisingly, having 4 or more losses on your record and still being in the top 10 of a division is considered more impressive. So why is it so easy to be undefeated in boxing? The primary reason is the barrier of entry, or how easy it is to become a professional boxer and fight for a big promotion. While becoming a professional boxer is not easy, it is relatively easier than joining traditional sports like the NBA, NFL, or UFC. In traditional sports, players usually go through a draft, and the draftees are among the top players in the country or the world. In boxing, the barrier of entry to become a professional fighter is much lower. There are about 20,000 professional boxers worldwide compared to only 1,000 to 5,000 professional MMA fighters, depending on the source. One could argue that there are more boxers than MMA fighters because MMA is relatively new compared to boxing. However, I believe that the ease of entry is the primary reason for the difference in numbers. To become a professional boxer, all you need is a boxing pro license, which can be obtained by applying to your state's athletic commission. Becoming a professional boxer with a top promotion is a difficult task. However, one can technically become a professional boxer and fight anyone with a pro license. On the other hand, in MMA, specifically the UFC, fighters are contracted to fight other UFC fighters. The UFC scouts for fighters and selects only the best ones through programs such as the Contender Series and the Ultimate Fighter. Thus, fighters in the UFC have passed a certain threshold to be in the organization. In contrast, in boxing, one can fight anyone with a pro license, which gives young up-and-coming fighters opportunities to fight competition levels much lower than theirs and handpick their opponents. Most boxing promotions do not obligate their fighters to fight within the promotion. Therefore, early in a fighter's career, promoters encourage fighters to fight outside the promotion and against opponents who aren't necessarily on their level. This phenomenon still happens within the promotion as well. Emmanuel Williams versus John Raccoon is an excellent example of this. Emmanuel Williams may have been signed to Top Rank to lose against the top guys and fluff their record. BoxRec, a record keeper of a professional fighter's career, shows that most young stars' first 5 to 10 fights have been against much worse opposition than themselves. These fighters take advantage of the low barrier of entry to become a professional boxer to handpick their opponents and get surefire wins. Promoters promote an undefeated fighter with maybe 10, 15, or even 20 wins, unbeknownst to the general population. These wins aren't against competition that's too good, but the fighter gets easy wins and builds up their confidence. The person who lost may be used to losing and at least gets a paycheck out of it. This situation makes everyone involved happy, and there's no incentive to stop it. The low barrier of entry in becoming a professional boxer means that there is no quality control with these fighters. This results in a vast majority of the 20,000 professional boxers lacking the same quality as those that promoters are promoting. Undefeated records become a problem when talented fighters are reluctant to fight someone who is equally as skilled as they are. This reluctance stems from the conditioning that comes with being promoted as an undefeated fighter, as well as the fear of losing their livelihood, career, and image. The hallmark of being a top boxer seems to be having an undefeated record, but this loses its prestige when so many fighters are undefeated. It becomes difficult to rank fighters, and an undefeated record is not necessarily an indicator of how good a fighter is. Instead, it is necessary to consider the context of who they have fought and whether they have been protected by their promoters. The cycle of finding lower competition and continuing to pad an undefeated record is easy to maintain due to the low barrier of entry for becoming a professional boxer. The lack of a governing body forcing fighters to face each other means that talented fighters do not necessarily fight each other often. Losing an undefeated record becomes a legitimate threat to a fighter's livelihood and image. In conclusion, while undefeated records may still be impressive to some, they happen too often and have lost their prestige. It is important to consider the context of who a fighter has fought and whether they've been protected by their promoter. The low barrier of entry in becoming a professional boxer allows this cycle of finding lower competition to continue, which ultimately hurts the sport. Well, that's all for today's video. We hope you enjoyed this one. Please smash that like button and hit the bell icon to be notified of any new videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.